"If you can play this piano, I'll marry you." The billionaire laughed at the janitor, but what happened next shocked everyone. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Atherton Hotel's ballroom cast an ethereal glow over Manhattan's elite. Tonight's charity gala was the event of the season, where influential figures showcased their wealth through designer outfits and calculated smiles. Among them, Sophia Reynolds moved with practiced grace, her emerald gown worth more than what most people earned in a year. As the 29-year-old heiress to the Reynolds media empire, she had perfected the art of being simultaneously adored and feared. While the privileged few clinked champagne flutes and exchanged business cards disguised as pleasantries, an army of invisible workers ensured the evening proceeded flawlessly. Among them was Ethan Coleman, a 32-year-old maintenance worker whose dark blue uniform was designed to blend into the background. 7 months at this job had taught him the cardinal rule of service: remain unseen unless needed. "The lighting is still too harsh on the east side," Sophia complained to the event coordinator, who scribbled notes frantically. "And please tell the catering staff to circulate more efficiently. These people shouldn't have to wait for their drinks." The coordinator nodded apologetically and hurried away. Sophia turned to continue her conversation with Senator Blake's wife when a waiter accidentally bumped into her assistant, causing a domino effect that sent a glass of red wine splashing across the bottom of Sophia's designer. The ballroom didn't fall silent. It never did for such minor incidents, but the immediate circle around Sophia held their breath. She looked down at the spreading stain, her expression hardening into something terrifying. "Who did this?" she demanded, voice cutting through the ambient chatter. The waiter had already disappeared, but nearby, Ethan had witnessed everything while adjusting a loose panel on one of the speakers. Without thinking, he grabbed a clean cloth from his pocket and stepped forward. "I can help with that, ma'am," he offered, presenting the cloth. Sophia's gaze fell on him like a predator spotting prey. "Oh, so it was you?" "No, Of course it was. Who else would be so incompetent?" She snatched the cloth from his hand, but made no move to use it. Instead, she looked him up and down with surgical precision. "Do you have any idea what this dress costs?" Several onlookers had gathered now, sensing the entertainment value of a public dressing down. Ethan felt his face burning but maintained eye contact. "I apologize for the accident, Ms. Reynolds. If you'd like, I can recommend our in-house dry cleaning service." "An accident?" she interrupted, her laugh sharp enough to cut glass. "Nothing in these events is accidental. It's just poor training and lack of attention." She raised her voice slightly, ensuring others could hear. "This is what happens when you hire people who clearly belong nowhere near civilized society." Someone in the crowd snickered. Ethan felt something inside him harden. He'd experienced this before. Wealthy people turning their frustrations into public spectacles at the expense of those who couldn't fight back. "I was just trying to help," he said quietly, aware that each word risked his employment. "Help?" Sophia's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched. "The best help you could offer is disappearing back into whatever hole you crawled out from." She glanced toward the grand piano sitting unattended in the corner. The pianist was on break, leaving the instrument momentarily silent. A malicious idea formed in her mind. She smiled, the expression never reaching her eyes. "Actually, I have a better idea. Since you're so eager to help, why don't you entertain us?" She gestured toward the piano. "If you can play that better than our hired pianist, I'll not only forget about this little incident, I'll marry you." The crowd erupted in laughter. Someone called out, "She's worth billions, buddy. Better start practicing." Sophia basked in the reaction. Her humiliation from the wine stain now transferred successfully to this nameless worker. "What do you say? Ready to become Mr. Reynolds?" More laughter followed. The hotel manager had noticed the commotion and was approaching with a concerned expression. Ethan knew he had seconds before being escorted away and probably fired for causing a disturbance. What happened next surprised even him. Instead of retreating or apologizing further, Ethan straightened his shoulders and said, "I accept your challenge." The crowd's laughter doubled in volume. Sophia's smile widened, delighted by what she perceived as foolish bravado that would lead to further humiliation. Well, don't keep us waiting, she prompted, gesturing grandly toward the piano. With all eyes following his every move, Ethan walked to the instrument. His hands, calloused from years of manual labor, hovered over the keys for a moment. The silence in the room grew expectant, hungry for the anticipated failure. He placed his fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes were hesitant, almost apologetic. A few guests exchanged amused glances, ready to witness the train wreck they'd been promised. But then something shifted. The melody found its footing, growing stronger, more confident. Ethan's fingers began to dance across the keys with increasing familiarity, producing sounds that shouldn't have been possible from a maintenance worker. The piece he played wasn't something easy or predictable. It was Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most technically challenging compositions in classical repertoire. The complex emotions woven through the music, longing, despair, hope, and triumph, filled the ballroom. One by one, conversations died. Champagne glasses stopped midway to lips. Even the serving staff paused their duties, transfixed by the unexpected performance. A renowned music critic who happened to be attending the gala pushed his way closer to the piano. His expression transformed from skepticism to wonder as he watched Ethan's technique. The perfect pedal work, the flawless transitions, the emotional depth that couldn't be faked. "My God," he whispered to his companion, "that's not just good playing. That's world-class." Sophia's triumphant smile had frozen on her face. The humiliation she had planned was backfiring spectacularly. She watched, stunned, as the man she had dismissed as nothing more than a service worker revealed himself to be an artist of extraordinary caliber. As Ethan approached the concerto's crescendo, several guests had already pulled out their phones, recording the unexpected performance. Social media would soon be ablaze with videos captioned, "Billionaire challenges hotel worker to play piano as a joke. Immediately regrets it." When the final notes faded, the ballroom remained silent for 3 heartbeats before erupting into thunderous applause. Ethan stood and gave a slight bow, his eyes finding Sophia's across the room. Her face had drained of color, the wine stain on her dress now the least of her concerns. The challenge she had issued in mockery now hung in the air between them, witnessed by hundreds of Manhattan's most influential people and already spreading online to thousands more. As the applause continued, someone near Sophia said loud enough for her to hear, "I believe you owe that man a wedding ring. Ms. Reynolds." For the first time in her adult life, Sophia Reynolds found herself completely speechless, the control she prized above all else slipping through her fingers like sand. The morning after the gala, Ethan woke to his phone buzzing incessantly. Overnight, the video had accumulated millions of views. Shah's Piano Man and Billionaire's bet were trending nationally. His performance had been shared by classical music pages, viral content aggregators, and even several celebrities. He sat on the edge of his modest bed in his small Brooklyn apartment, scrolling through notifications with disbelief. After years of anonymity, he was suddenly everywhere. The comments ranged from admiration of his talent to speculation about his background and relationship with Sophia Reynolds. Who is this guy? Verfrühsiedebe, former concert pianist? Did she really promise to marry him? Another rich person getting owned. Meanwhile, across the East River in her Manhattan penthouse, Sophia paced frantically. Her PR team had been assembled for an emergency meeting, and her phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from friends, family, and media outlets seeking comments. "This needs to disappear," she told her chief publicist, a stern woman named Vivian, who had managed the Reynolds family's image for 15 years. "It's too late for that," Vivian replied, sliding her tablet across the table. "The video has gone viral. Major news networks are picking it up. They're digging into both your backgrounds." On the screen was a compilation of headlines: "Billionaire heiress humiliated after challenging maintenance worker," "Mystery, pianist takes internet by storm," "Sophia Reynolds, marriage proposal joke turns serious." Sophia collapsed into a chair. "This is ridiculous. It was obviously a joke. Nobody actually believes I'd marry some random worker." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "The internet disagrees. People love an underdog story, and you've inadvertently cast yourself as the villain." Before Sophia could respond, her phone pinged with a message from her father, Conrad Reynolds. The text was brief but chilling. My office, 2 p.m. alone. As both Ethan and Sophia dealt with their new reality, the internet detectives were already uncovering the truth. By midday, several music blogs had connected the dots. One posted an article that spread like wildfire. Identified, Piano Man is Ethan Coleman, former prodigy. The article included old performance videos and reviews. 10 years ago, Ethan had been considered one of the most promising young classical pianists in America. A graduate of Juilliard with numerous awards, he had been on track for an international career when he suddenly disappeared from the classical music scene. At his apartment, Ethan ignored the knocks on his door from journalists seeking interviews. Instead, he sat at his small electric keyboard, a far cry from the grand pianos he once commanded, and played softly, lost in memories. The truth was both simpler and more complicated than the speculation online. His parents, both music teachers, had invested everything in his education. When they were involved in a devastating car accident 8 years ago, the medical bills had been catastrophic. Ethan had abandoned his musical career to care for them, selling his piano and taking whatever jobs would provide steady income and health insurance. After his parents recovered enough to live independently, the momentum of his career was long gone. The classical music world moved on, and new prodigies took his place. His parents had relocated to Arizona for his father's health, and Ethan had stayed in New York, working a series of maintenance and service jobs, his dreams locked away like the sheet music he kept in a trunk under his bed. Until last night, when Sophia Reynolds's cruelty had accidentally unlocked something he'd buried for nearly a decade. At precisely 2 p.m., Sophia sat across from her father in his corner office overlooking Central Park. Conrad Reynolds had built a media empire from a single newspaper, and at 65 he remained as intimidating as ever. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked without preamble. "It was a stupid joke that got out of hand," Sophia defended herself. "People will forget about it in a week." "The Reynolds name is not a joke," Conrad replied coldly. "Our reputation is everything. Your mother and I have worked too hard to have you tarnish it with childish behavior." "I'll issue an apology." "That's not enough," he cut her off. "The board is concerned. Our stock dropped 3 points this morning. Advertisers are nervous about being associated with viral negativity." Sophia felt a familiar weight settle in her chest. Throughout her life, her worth had been measured by how well she represented the Reynolds brand. Any misstep was treated as a catastrophic business liability. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "Fix it," Conrad said simply. "Find this man. Make amends publicly. Turn this into a positive story for our brand." As Sophia left her father's office, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It contained a link to a new article. With growing dread, she clicked it. The headline read, "Exclusive, the truth about Sophia Reynolds' treatment of staff." The byline belonged to Madison Clark, a former hotel employee. The article detailed numerous incidents of Sophia's abusive behavior towards service workers at various venues. Madison described a pattern of entitlement, cruel remarks, and deliberate humiliation. She had collected testimonials from other workers who had similar experiences. What happened with Ethan Coleman wasn't an isolated incident, Madison wrote. "It's part of a pattern of behavior that the wealthy and powerful think remains hidden. But we see everything, and we remember." The article was gaining traction rapidly, with numerous comments from service workers sharing their own experiences with difficult clients. What had begun as an embarrassing viral moment was evolving into a genuine crisis for Sophia's reputation and, by extension, her family's business interests. Meanwhile, Ethan had finally answered his door to find not a journalist, but his former piano professor from Juilliard, Dr. Eleanor Winters. "It seems you haven't lost your touch," she said with a gentle smile. "May I come in?" Over tea in his small kitchen, Dr. Winters explained that she had never stopped wondering what had happened to her most promising student. "I respected your privacy when you left," she said, "but I always hoped you would return to music someday." Ethan stared into his cup. "I didn't have a choice." "I know about your parents," she nodded. "But that was years ago, Ethan. Why didn't you come back?" He struggled to articulate the complex emotions that had kept him away. At first it was practical. I needed stable work. Then, I don't know. It felt like the music world had moved on, and maybe I was afraid. Afraid of what? That I wasn't good enough anymore. That I'd lost whatever spark I might have had. He looked up at her. It's easier to be the promising talent who disappeared than the comeback that disappointed everyone. Dr. Winters reached across the table and squeezed his hand. What I heard in that video wasn't just technical skill, Ethan. It was the playing of someone who has lived, suffered, and survived. That's not something you can teach at Juilliard. As they talked, Ethan's phone rang with a call from the hotel's management. With apologies for the awkward situation, they informed him that he was being placed on paid leave, while the situation cooled down. We're not firing you, the HR director clarified, but having you on property right now is creating complications. After hanging up, Ethan laughed without humor. Well, that's that. I've been effectively suspended for being humiliated. Dr. Winters studied him thoughtfully. Perhaps this is the universe giving you time to consider your next move. The Harrington Foundation is holding auditions next month for their fellowship program. It includes a stipend and performance opportunities. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had posted an unsubstantiated rumor online, claiming the entire incident had been staged, that Ethan had been a plant, hired to create viral content for the hotel. The poster suggested Ethan had never stopped performing professionally and was using this incident for publicity. The comment section quickly filled with speculation. Some defended him, but others began questioning everything about the story. The narrative was shifting, and Ethan found himself caught in a web of public opinion he had never asked to be part of. 3 days after the gala, the story showed no signs of fading. If anything, it had evolved into something larger, a symbol of class division, privilege, and the hidden talents of everyday people. News vans remained parked outside Ethan's apartment building, forcing him to stay with a friend in Queens to avoid the constant harassment. Sophia wasn't faring much better. She had cancelled all public appearances and was effectively hiding in her penthouse, watching helplessly as her social media accounts flooded with criticism. The hashtag #TieSophiaTheSnob was gaining traction, and several brands she represented were quietly putting their partnerships under review. Her father's directive to fix it echoed in her mind, but she had no idea how. Her initial instinct, to have her legal team threaten Madison Clark with defamation, had been overruled by the PR team, who insisted it would only make things worse. You need to show humility, Vivian had advised. The public needs to see a different side of you. But Sophia had spent her entire life building an armor of superiority. The thought of appearing vulnerable terrified her more than any financial consequences. Alone in her penthouse that evening, Sophia found herself doing something she rarely did, reflecting on her behavior. She'd always justified her treatment of service workers as maintaining standards. After all, wasn't that what her parents had taught her? The Reynolds family paid premium prices and expected premium service. Yet watching the video of herself at the gala, the cruel smile, the mockery in her voice, she didn't recognize the person she had become. Or perhaps more accurately, she didn't want to recognize her. Her thoughts were interrupted by a call from an unexpected source. Her grandmother, Elizabeth Reynolds. At 88, Elizabeth was the family matriarch who had largely stepped away from public life. Unlike her son Conrad, who had expanded the family business through aggressive acquisitions and celebrity, Elizabeth believed in old-fashioned values like discretion and dignity. She rarely involved herself in family drama, which made her call significant. "You've made quite a mess, dear," Elizabeth said without preamble. Sophia sighed. "I know, Grandma. Dad's already read me the riot act about stock prices and brand damage." "I'm not calling about the business," Elizabeth replied. "I'm calling about you." "Me?" "Yes, you. The little girl who used to cry when she saw homeless people on the street and begged me to give them money. The teenager who volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend. What happened to her?" Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. "I grew up. I learned how the world works." "No," Elizabeth said firmly. "You learned how your father's world works. That's not the same thing." The conversation left Sophia unsettled. After hanging up, she found herself opening her laptop and searching for more information about Ethan Coleman. Beyond the viral headlines and speculation, she found old concert reviews and interviews from his Juilliard days. One video particularly caught her attention, a 19-year-old Ethan performing at Carnegie Hall, his face alight with passion, as his hands created magic from the keys. The YouTube comments were filled with people, wondering what had happened to the promising young talent. For the first time, Sophia saw Ethan not as a prop in her personal drama, but as a human being with his own story, one that had intersected with hers in the worst possible way. Meanwhile, across the city, Madison Clark's article had sparked something unexpected. Service workers from restaurants, hotels, and event venues across New York had begun sharing their own stories of mistreatment by wealthy clients. What had started as one woman's account was evolving into a movement under the hashtag We're Not Invisible. Madison, a 25-year-old former hospitality worker who had left the industry to pursue a degree in journalism, found herself at the center of a conversation about workplace dignity. Her inbox overflowed with messages from workers thanking her for speaking up. "I never expected this kind of response," she told a local news station that had invited her for an interview. "I just couldn't stay silent anymore after seeing what happened to Ethan. These aren't isolated incidents. This is about a culture that treats service workers as less than human." The interviewer asked if she had any message for Sophia Reynolds. Madison thought carefully before answering. "I don't want to vilify Ms. Reynolds specifically. She's a product of a system that teaches certain people that their money entitles them to treat others however they want. What I hope is that this conversation leads to real change in how we value all work and all workers." The interview went viral, adding another dimension to the unfolding story. Workplace advocacy groups began reaching out to Madison, offering platforms to expand the conversation. For Ethan, the situation had become increasingly complicated. While many defended him, others continued questioning his motives. Alexander Daniels, a prominent business podcaster known for his cynical takes, suggested on his show that the entire incident had been orchestrated. "Think about it," Daniels told his millions of listeners. "They're a supposedly ordinary maintenance worker who just happens to be a former Juilliard prodigy. A perfectly timed viral moment at a high-profile event. This has publicity stunt written all over it." The allegations infuriated Ethan, but he refused to engage. He had never wanted fame or attention. He had simply responded to humiliation with dignity and talent. Now he was caught in a narrative beyond his control. Dr. Winters visited again, bringing the application materials for the Harrington Fellowship. "You don't have to decide right away," she said, "but promise me you'll consider it." Ethan stared at the papers. "Even if I wanted to return to music, who would take me seriously now? Half the internet thinks I'm some kind of scam artist." "The music world cares about one thing, how you play," Dr. Winters replied. "Everything else is noise." As Ethan contemplated his future, Sophia was making a decision of her own. After a sleepless night following her grandmother's call, she had reached out to her PR team with an idea that shocked them. "You want to do what?" Vivian asked incredulously. "I want to meet him," Sophia repeated. "Not for cameras, not for social media, just to talk." "That's incredibly risky," Vivian warned. "He could record everything, twist your words." "I'll take that chance," Sophia interrupted, "because continuing to hide isn't working." Finding Ethan proved challenging. He wasn't at his apartment, and the hotel wouldn't provide his contact information. Eventually, through a series of connections and the promise of a generous donation, Sophia obtained his email address from a former Juilliard administrator. Her message was brief. "Mr. Coleman, I would like to speak with you privately about what happened at the gala." No press, no lawyers, no agenda beyond a conversation. Sophia Reynolds. She didn't expect a response. Why would he want to talk to her after what she'd done? But to her surprise, a reply came the next morning. "Ms. Reynolds, I have nothing to gain from prolonging this situation, and I imagine you feel the same. I'll meet you tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Washington Square Park chess tables. Please come alone. Ethan Coleman." The following afternoon, Sophia found herself doing something she rarely did, taking the subway. Her usual driver would have attracted attention, and anonymity was crucial for this meeting. Dressed in jeans, a simple sweater, and large sunglasses, she blended with the crowds in a way that felt foreign but oddly liberating. Washington Square Park was busy with the usual mix of students, tourists, and locals. Sophia spotted Ethan immediately, sitting at a chess table, his fingers absently tracing patterns on the checkered board. He wore the same maintenance uniform she had mocked days earlier, which she realized was probably intentional. As she approached, her carefully prepared opening remarks evaporated. Face to face with the man whose life she had upended with casual cruelty, all she managed was a simple, "Thank you for meeting me." Ethan looked up, his expression unreadable. "I almost didn't come." "I wouldn't have blamed you," Sophia replied, taking the seat across from him. For a moment they sat in uncomfortable silence, the chess pieces between them like physical manifestations of the barriers that separated their worlds. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Why did you want to see me?" Sophia had asked herself the same question repeatedly on the subway ride. The PR-approved answer involved strategic image rehabilitation. Her father's answer would have been about damage control for the family business. But sitting across from Ethan, she found herself giving an answer that surprised them both. "Because I need to understand," she said softly. "I need to understand how I became someone who could do what I did to you." Ethan studied Sophia's face, searching for signs of calculation or insincerity. He found none, only genuine confusion and what appeared to be remorse. "I didn't come here for an apology," he said finally. "I know," Sophia replied. "But you deserve one anyway." "I'm sorry for what I did, not because it went viral, but because it was wrong." A child's laughter from a nearby playground filled the silence that followed. Ethan moved a pawn on the chessboard, a gesture that seemed to help him gather his thoughts. "Why did you stop playing?" Sophia asked, gesturing toward his hands. "The internet found your old performances." "You were extraordinary." Ethan's expression tightened. "Life happened. My parents were in an accident. Medical bills piled up. I needed stable work with health insurance." He moved another chess piece. "Not all of us have the luxury of pursuing our passions, regardless of circumstances." The subtle dig wasn't lost on Sophia. "I've never had to worry about money," she acknowledged, "but that doesn't mean my life has been perfect." "I'm sure being a billionaire has its challenges," Ethan replied, his voice tinged with sarcasm. Sophia could have become defensive, retreated behind the walls of privilege she'd maintained her entire life. Instead, she surprised herself again. "My father measures love in stock points," she said quietly. "My mother collects children's charities, the way other women collect jewelry, to be displayed at convenient times and forgotten otherwise. I grew up in houses that felt like museums where I couldn't touch anything, surrounded by people paid to care about me." She took a deep breath. "I'm not asking for pity. God knows I have advantages most people would kill for. But somewhere along the way, I started believing that money and status were substitutes for actual human connection, that treating people poorly was a sign of power rather than weakness." Ethan remained silent, but his posture had softened slightly. "When I saw you approaching with that cloth, trying to help me," Sophia continued, "something in me snapped. I saw kindness, and I responded with cruelty because kindness makes me uncomfortable. It feels like a transaction I don't understand." "Not everything is a transaction," Ethan said. "In my world, everything is." They sat in contemplative silence, the chess game between them progressing without either player fully focusing on it. "What happens now?" Ethan finally asked. "First PR team crafts a perfect apology. You make a charitable donation, everyone moves on." Sophia shook her head. "I don't know. For the first time in my life, I don't have a strategic plan. I just know I don't want to be the person in that video anymore." Something in her sincerity seemed to reach Ethan. He leaned forward slightly. "The hotel placed me on leave," he said. "Paid, but indefinite." "Because of me," Sophia acknowledged. "Because of the situation," Ethan corrected. "But yes, a situation you created. Meanwhile, my former piano professor wants me to apply for a fellowship program. Are you going to do it?" Ethan shrugged. "Part of me wants to. Another part is terrified. What if I've lost whatever talent I once had? What if this whole viral moment is the peak of my second act?" "Play for me," Sophia said suddenly. "What?" "Not here, obviously. But I want to hear you play again, not as a challenge or spectacle, but just music." The request hung between them, simple yet profound. After a moment, Ethan nodded. There's a practice room at my old school where I sometimes go when the building's mostly empty. Meet me there tonight at 8. They exchanged contact information, a strange formality given how their lives had become so publicly intertwined, and parted ways. As Sophia walked back toward the subway, she felt lighter than she had in years, as though she had set down a burden she hadn't realized she was carrying. That evening, in a small practice room, with scuffed floors and soundproofed walls, Ethan played for an audience of one. Not Rachmaninoff this time, but Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, tender, introspective, and achingly beautiful. Sophia sat in a plastic chair, eyes closed, allowing the music to wash over her. There was no video to capture this moment, no social media to distort it, just two people connected through the universal language of music. When the final notes faded, Sophia opened her eyes to find Ethan watching her, his expression vulnerable in a way it hadn't been in Washington Square Park. "That was beautiful," she said simply. "It feels good," he admitted. "Playing without pressure or expectations, just playing." "I have an idea," Sophia said hesitantly, "and you can absolutely say no." The idea, as it turned out, was ambitious. Sophia proposed establishing a foundation that would address two issues simultaneously: providing music education and performance opportunities to talented individuals facing financial barriers, and developing programs to promote dignity and respect in service industries. "My family's money can do some good for once," she explained, "and it would give both of us a way to transform this viral moment into something meaningful." Ethan was skeptical at first. "Why would you want to partner with me? You barely know me." "Because you remind me of who I used to be before I forgot what matters," Sophia replied, "and because we need each other's perspectives to make this work." Over the following weeks, an unlikely partnership formed. Sophia brought her business acumen and connections, while Ethan provided the lived experience and artistic vision, the foundation needed for authenticity. Madison Clark was invited to join the advisory board, bringing her journalism background and advocacy for service workers. Dr. Winters offered her expertise in music education and mentorship. The announcement of the Visible Arts Foundation, named in recognition of the Yozgad We're Not Invisible movement, was met with cautious optimism. Many suspected it was merely a PR stunt, while others saw potential for genuine impact. Sophia's father was predictably displeased. "This is not what I meant by fixing the situation," he said during a tense dinner. "You're throwing away your reputation on some vanity project with a piano player." For the first time, Sophia didn't wither under his disapproval. "I'm trying to build something that matters," she responded. "Something that's mine, not just another extension of the Reynolds brand." The foundation's inaugural event was held at the same hotel where Sophia and Ethan's story had begun. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, especially when Ethan took the stage to perform. This time, however, he wasn't alone. He had arranged a piece for piano and string quartet, featuring young musicians from underserved communities who had become the foundation's first fellows. The music they created together, part classical, part contemporary, told a story of transformation. As the final movement reached its crescendo, Sophia watched from the wings, a lump forming in her throat. When the performance ended, Ethan approached the microphone. "Music has the power to make the invisible visible," he said. "To reveal what we hide, even from ourselves." He gestured towards Sophia, who reluctantly joined him on stage. The audience's reaction was mixed. Some applauded, others whispered behind their hands. "Ms. Reynolds and I met under circumstances neither of us would have chosen," Ethan continued. "But sometimes life's most important lessons come from our most uncomfortable moments." Sophia stepped forward, heart pounding. The speech she had prepared suddenly felt inadequate. Instead, she spoke from the heart. "I spent most of my life believing that worth was measured by bank accounts and influence," she said. "It took a chance encounter and a public humbling for me to realize how wrong I was. This foundation isn't about redemption or good publicity. It's about recognizing the dignity in every person, regardless of their job title or tax bracket." As she spoke, she noticed a familiar face in the audience, her grandmother, Elizabeth, who had come despite the family's objections. The elderly woman's eyes shimmered with pride, and she offered a subtle nod of approval that meant more to Sophia than any business success ever had. After the formal program ended, the evening transitioned to a reception where foundation donors mingled with service workers, musicians, and community advocates. The traditional barriers of status had not disappeared entirely, but they had softened, creating space for genuine connection. Ethan found Sophia near the same piano that had changed both their lives. "Your speech was good," he said. "Authentic." "It's easier to be authentic when you actually mean what you're saying," she replied with a small smile. "So what happens now?" he asked, echoing his question from their chess game weeks earlier. Sophia looked around at the diverse gathering, the visible result of their shared vision. "Now we do the work," she said. "The real work, not just the symbolic gestures." Ethan nodded. "And us, this strange partnership of ours. I think we need each other," Sophia said honestly. "You keep me grounded in reality, and maybe I can help you dream